Hello, everyone. This is ARC4CFD Section 1, Lecture 4. Very exciting because this is an amazing topic for this lecture. We have just learned how to successfully allocate resources on the cluster, and we have also learned that we can allocate more than one core, for example, so we can do multi-core simulations, and that's the whole purpose of using HPC system for your simulation. So in this lecture, we focus on parallel computing. So the goals are to explain the potential benefits and even limitations of using parallel computing, use the correct terminology when referring to parallel computing, and also select the appropriate type of parallel architecture to carry out the computational task. Finally, we want to also understand, we will describe the various types of parallel communication in parallel computing. So let's dive into it. First of all, we need to understand what working in parallel means. So in this case, what the goal is to split up our problem in subtasks and then hand this work to several cores or computers in this case, and then have them work in a collaborative way to the final solution. So this is the whole purpose of it, to maybe run our simulation a lot faster and more efficiently. Now, in the ideal case, we would like that if our program is running on n processors, then this program will run n times faster. Now, the problem is that the reality is not like that. The problem rises because the not all parts of the program can be parallelized, and this is something that you will learn throughout this lecture. And there will be potential overhead due to communication between processes. Keep in mind that the more processes you have, or the more CPUs you have, the longer time they're going to spend communicating with each other and exchanging data. And that's time that they spend not computing, but actually, communicating. So we highlight right away what are the two strategy for an efficient parallelism. So one is to limit the interprocessor communication. So you would like basic or almost none communication, if possible, between processors. Of course, that's not going to be possible in most cases, but you want to limit as much as possible. And finally, you want to also balance the load between processes. We will see in a minute what this actually means. So first of all, it's very important, and it will be very, very clarified inside this lecture, the distinction between a shared versus a distributed memory architecture. So in a shared memory architecture, you have several CPUs that are sharing the same memory. There is a very nice analogy that I'm not going to spoil inside this lecture, so please scroll down and look at it to understand how the shared memory architecture work. In a distributed memory architecture, which is the architecture of most computer cluster, several CPUs or node are connected to a memory, and then they are all interconnected to each other via a very fast network. This is the way that, for example, Alliance computer cluster work, and the one that we need to be comfortable in using. One of the most common strategy to parallelize a problem, specifically in CFD, but in also many other applications, is to do a domain decomposition. So for instance, let's say we are studying the temperature changes in the water in Lake Ontario, and we are doing that using some sort of software. We can basically split the problem in chunks. So on the left side, you split the problem in 4 processes. On the right side, on the other hand, we split the problem into 42 processes. So you might, you might think that splitting the problem in 42 processes, I'm going to reach the solution a lot faster than what I will do with 4 processes. Okay, so technically speaking, you would be correct, but the problem is that you need to consider a very, very big problem that might arise in parallel computing, which is load imbalance. So let's take the 42 processes case, for example. with this specific problem, you will notice that a bunch of processors, actually a lot of them, for example, DEF, are actually not doing anything, because if you want to analyze the temperature in the water, basically only the processes where the water is will be busy processing, and DEF and a lot of other processes will be basically idling. This is a scenario where you don't want to work, because remember, the execution time in computing is given by the slowest process. So you're going to run a very inefficient simulation in this way. And we will explain in this lecture what are a few strategies to overcome the load imbalance issue. Finally, we will introduce the message passing interface in Python. So message passing interface is a common parallel architecture for writing your code um, in a parallel way, in a way that processors can communicate between each other and exchange information. And it's common to many programming language, not only Python, C as the same, and so on, Fortran, and so on and so forth. But what is important is to realize what type of communication we have. Throughout this class, we will talk about point-to-point communication. We'll talk about blocking type communication. These are the type of communication that arise when you are waiting, you ask for an information, and then you don't move on, you don't do anything until you receive the information back. So basically that process is blocked until it receives information. And then we will talk about collective communication. Let's say you want to broadcast a message to all processes, then you will do that with the collective type communication. Everything will be explained in this lecture. So good luck with it. And again, I acknowledge the collaboration between MPI Lab, Computer Ontario, and University of Waterloo for this course, and I will see you next lecture.